All right, we are live. Let me see if this is gonna. Man, I need a full-time tech guy. This is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I spent so much time trying to get this correct, and then now what does it do? It absolutely screws up. So I'm gonna have to fix it on the fly right here. Of course. It seems like I am always troubleshooting something constantly. It never stops. So anyway, this is my real first live stream. I've been spent the last couple of days just trying to figure out how all this stuff works, and since I am a one-man band, there is no one else to ever ask for help. So if I don't figure it out, then it never ever gets fixed, which is good and bad because you learn to rely on yourself. But then again, it drives you insane because sometimes you just want things to work without having to troubleshoot a bunch of things. All right, so this should fix it on the site. You should be able to see it on michaelray.com. There's a dash between Michael and Ray. I wish I didn't have to have the dash there because it's hard to say, yeah, go to michael-ray.com. It just doesn't sound right. But that's how it had to be, so there really wasn't anything I could do about it. So that was the best address I could get at the time. There's a country singer named Michael Ray, and he gets priority over everything apparently with the name, even though I'm older than he is. Let's see. Let's see. Good. All right. So it's up on the side. Good. All right. So it's up on the site. That's good. I guess I'm going to have to put the embed code in every single time before I do a live stream. I'm going to have to put the embed code in. I guess that's just going to be something I'm going to have to deal with. So anyway, I'll introduce myself. My name is Michael Ray, and I have been fighting this uphill battle of American politics since probably 1995. After I got out of the military, I remember one day I was at a job. When I got out of the military, I got a job driving. I was on the road a lot. And one day, since I drove a lot, I listened to the radio, and I came across talk radio. And there was a guy on the radio, and he was saying things that I agreed with. But I remember thinking, I agree with all this, but why have I never heard anybody say things like this ever before? And basically what it was is he was just saying things that, my father or my grandfather would say, just kind of everyday truisms, just common sense stuff. And I started thinking, the first thing I started thinking is, why have I never heard anybody ever articulate these kind of things before? And that really piqued my curiosity. And I was kind of like, if I've never heard this before on the news, television, or whatever, that means that someone is either suppressing or giving an alternate version of reality. And I gotta tell you, one of the first things it made me was angry, because I started to look back, and I look back over things like I'm going to date myself, but MASH in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, there was a TV show, MASH. And in that show, it was supposed to be about the Korean War. and it was supposed to be, it was a comedy. Um, and it had the Hawkeye and Pierce were the two funny guys in there, and they were cutting up. But it was like it was half serious and it was half funny, and it was a fantastic show. It was really good. But what I realized with that show and other shows like All in the Family and things was that there was a political agenda being driven through those shows that most of us had no idea they were doing. Like in MASH, for example, you could tell they said it was supposed to be set in the Korean War, but you could tell it was Vietnam that they were actually representing. And and they had the characters, like I said, Hawkeye and Pierce, and then there was Winchester, which was he was the blue blood Republican, and he's the one that the other two would always make fun of all the time, and they were making, in hindsight, they were making political points and political arguments and things like that, but they weren't telling you that it was political. They were just presenting it as television, just entertainment. And the same thing with All in the Family. Well, who was All in the Family? Well, Rob Reiner, probably in the show, his nickname was Meathead, and there's never been a more a more astute name for somebody than that. Rob Reiner as Meathead, because he really was. And in that show, he would chastise Archie Bunker because Archie was he was a bigot and he was this and that and all that. They just made Archie look like he was stupid, and the point was it was they were manipulating us even when we didn't realize it, in these two shows that were comedies, where instead of just entertaining us, they were playing with our heads. They were making these subliminal or not so subliminal political messages in it, and it made me mad. And that's when I really first realized that this stuff had been going on. And then I started to actively kind of look for these things, and I've been going down the rabbit hole ever since. Now, when the show The Matrix came along, it's been out for a long time now, but I don't remember exactly what year it came out. Then you came up with there was the term being red pill, and in the movie, there was a choice given. There was a red pill and a blue pill. If you took the blue pill, you just went back to sleep and you believed whatever it is that you want to believe. If you took the red pill, you woke up and you saw things for how they actually were. So if you're wondering where the term getting red pill came from, it came from the original Matrix movie, where Neo is confronted with that choice. Do you want to know the truth, or do you want to just go back to sleep? And of course, Neo chooses to know the truth. So that's where that coined the term getting red pilled. And so ever since then, I've realized that things are, they say ignorance is bliss, and that's absolutely true. And the flip side of that is that being too aware, being too educated it's the opposite. It's really a hard thing it's a hard weight to carry, because you see all of the evil stuff that's being done. It's just terrible. You just wish sometimes that you could just go back to being a little kid again and not having any of these worries. But we can't. We have to wake up. And as we've seen since the 2016 election, that the Democratic Party has taken the mask off, and we know now, and I've known this for some time, but the general everyday Americans know that what we have now is an invasion. We've been we've been infiltrated by these, socialist, communist, whatever you want to call them. They're Marxist, and they slowly infiltrated into our schools and into government on every level, state, federal, local, for years. And now we're seeing this manifestation of what we had always feared has come true, and that is that these Marxists have gotten in, and ever since they've gotten in positions of power, they have wreaked havoc. They have distorted the truth. They have unleashed violence. They have lied and distorted and corrupted everything they touch. And as we've seen since the 2016 election, when Hillary Clinton, during debates, when Hillary Clinton was saying how terrible it was that Trump might not honor the outcome of the election. So what does she do when she loses? She ferments violence. She does the exact same thing that she accused Trump of doing. She did it herself. That's just how bad, that's just how terrible, how evil these people are. They have no regard for the truth, no regard for you or me. They hate us. They just look at us as a stepping stone to get whatever it is they want. And if they got to step all over us and our families, then they'll do it. And the masks come off. And so people like Soros and the Clintons and the Obamas and the Bushes, they fund people like Antifa. They plan things like 9/11. They set in motion the worst things. They've unleashed on this world terrorism and evil that most of us never even dreamed could happen, or that things could ever get quite so bad. And it's really hard when you realize that it is your government that are the bad guys. That when you look at what's going on in the world and you realize that there's this cabal of people who do evil in your name, it is beyond upsetting. And whether it's the violence of Antifa, just the rhetoric since the 2016 elections, it just makes you wonder how much longer are we going to make it as a country. Because thank God for President Trump. He's come in, he's trying to do all he can to hold these people back. But even at the best case scenario, he has 6 more years. Best case scenario, okay, he may only have 2 years. He either has 2 years or 6 years left, depending on if he gets reelected. And someone else is going to be president after Trump. The problem with that is it probably doesn't make any difference between whether that person is a Democrat or a Republican, because either one of those two people are most likely going to be globalists that are behind the new world order. And if you're a Christian, you realize that we are living in the end days, that we are living the pages of the book of Revelation. So it's very bleak. It's a very bleak outlook, but we can't give up. We got to keep fighting. And like I said, one way or another, I pray that Trump is able to serve out 2 full terms. I hope they don't kill him. I hope they don't do something to him or his family, I just pray for him every night that he's okay, because once Trump is gone, someone else is going to fill that seat, and it's probably going to be bad, very bad. So use your freedom of speech now while you still have it. They're in the process right now of taking it away. I mean, who would ever have thought that we would be in a time where you would have people arguing against free speech? That if you ask some people, they will say, no, we shouldn't have free speech. That the censoring the social media giants do is fine. They should do it. We shouldn't have free speech. Whoever thought that that would be what the United States has become? But nonetheless, that's where we're at. That's where we're at. And now we have to ask ourselves, how much longer do we have? You need to get prepared. I don't like to be someone who a fearmonger or anything, but you do have to face reality at some point and know that we are really in a time that it's really really hard to deal with, because we truly are in a time where everything is upside down. And so there's nobody in the chat, which always makes me wonder, one, does anybody actually even know that this live stream is going on? Are they shadow banning? Are they doing something to it? You just wonder, because just the just math itself says you should have at least X amount of people at any given time. When half the planet's online, you would think at some point. But you really can't tell what they're doing behind the scenes, whether it's YouTube or anywhere else. But so anyway, the whole purpose of what I do and my website and the videos I make and things is to twofold. It is one, to make sure that people don't vote for the left, that they don't vote for these people that are literally trying to kill them, that hate them, that want to beat them. and two, the number two thing that I would want to encourage everybody is to have a relationship with the Lord, because you're really going to need that to get through the time that we're in. And if you've been paying any attention over any amount of time, you realize that things are not as they once were. And so my website, I'll type it here in the chat so that, and then you'll know what it is. All right, so that's my website. If you go there, it'll have things like, my email address. You should be able to tell. Let me go there real quick so I can. You should be able to tell what my Twitter handle is. You can find what my BitChute, what I am on BitChute, or Gab, or Vimeo, Pinterest, YouTube, Twitter, like I said, Google Plus, all that. There's a follow button there that you can put your email address in, and any new posts I do, you'll get. And so from the site, you can pretty much gather all my stuff. My email address is here, red, and videos. I do a podcast, which I think we're up to episode 8 now. Episode 9, which is going to be next. Oh, and if you're interested in co-hosting a podcast with me, let me know. Go to the site, use my email address there. Send me an email address if you're interested in doing a podcast, because I'd be interested in doing a podcast with another person. We would kind of co-host a podcast together. It's a lot easier to do a podcast when you have two people, because they can banter off of each other and they can talk, and it just makes for a much better podcast than just one person. So if you're interested in that, let me know. Okay. And also on the site here, one tab says Bible Project video. There's a really neat thing that a couple guys online are doing. It's called the Bible Project, and they've used animation to explain the Bible, and it's really neat for kids. And even I like watching them myself. And so I have a link there where it starts off in Genesis 1, and then it goes through, and you can watch the video, and it's just really neat. It's the guys that did this did a really good job of presenting the Bible in a very easy to understand way. That's really neat. Some other things. I told you about the podcast. If you want to sign up, if you want to become a member, maybe submit an article to the site, you can do that. You might want to email me about that, and then I can get you set up with that. There's one link is the video gallery. Yeah, so there's quite a bit of stuff here on the site, and I have the site and lots and lots of other accounts. So like I said, this is the best way to kind of find everything. Now, so usually what I do about now is it's about 5. What I would usually do about now is I would usually listen to something, pick one of my YouTube favorites, and perhaps listen to a episode or 2 of one of my favorite people on YouTube here. Let me catch one. Let me see. Let's see what we got here. So I'm going to find something good. Bill Whittle. I don't know if you've ever heard of Bill Whittle, but he's really good. I like him. He does political commentary, and I like him a lot. So I think what I'll do, I will kind of just carry on like I normally would, my normal day, and then if you pop into the chat, then we can talk. Let me see. Let me get Bill up here.
I'm David Lossing. I'm the Democratic candidate for the State House in the 51st District. 8 years ago, a pipeline ruptured in the Kalamazoo.
And we're skipping you.
Okay, so here's the third group. People who are just sick of politics, and it doesn't matter what party they're in, Democrats, Republicans, Independents, Green Party, Communists, they are just sick of it all, and they just want to throw up their hands and say, a pox on all your houses, I don't want to have anything to do with this. Why should they take the time to go vote, and not only vote, but vote Republican?
Well, first of all, I can certainly sympathize with that position. There have been times when I just said I can't possibly consider myself a Republican, not because of the things that they did, but because of the things that they didn't do. But put aside your particular individual reason for saying a pox on both their houses, I'm not going to vote. This is something I think it has to be made crystal clear to everybody. Crystal clear. When you don't vote, you are still voting. Your decision to not make a decision is a decision, and it's going to affect the outcome of the country. So when you say, well, I didn't vote, so it's not on my shoulders.
Yes, it is.
With enormous respect, that is a cowardly position to take, and it's an irresponsible one to take. You are a product of a society that has been given to you enormous freedoms, unbelievable liberties, unimaginable prosperity. A country whose primary health concern is obesity, even among poor people. That is a remarkable gift that you were born into. And to say that I want no part of it is just not fair. It's morally wrong to not go out there and to be. And if your entire justification for not going is so that you can have the satisfaction of telling people, oh, I don't vote for these clowns, I'm not impressed. I'm sorry. I don't find that to be a virtue. I find that to be a form of selfishness.
I agree.
Politics throughout history has been just despised. I don't think there's a culture on earth that doesn't, and throughout all of history either, that doesn't hold politicians in contempt. And the reason for people having such a low opinion of politics is politicians. With very few exceptions that you can count on one hand, they're people who are in it for gain, and they're not terribly, successful or in many cases terribly bright. So the question is, if I can't convince you to go and vote, why would I get you to go and vote for Republicans? If I understand there's nothing out there, but he said, she said, they're liars, we're liars, they're evil, they're stupid. Put that aside for a second. The thing that is most disturbing to me about my life, I'll be 60 in April, is that when I was a young person, and probably when you were too, politics didn't touch every aspect of our lives. Politics didn't touch, what kind of car you drove, didn't touch what the temperature of your house should be. Politics didn't touch any of that. And that pushing of politics into the entire culture is done primarily by Democrats because the left-wing liberal argument is that we need more government in order to achieve these goals. And I'm not putting any bad motivations to these people. They think that the best way for us to solve our problems is more government. If you think that there's a need for more government and more regulation in this society, that we don't have enough government in America, that there are not enough regulations for you to comply with, if the fact that you walk down the street on any given day, you are in violation of any number of federal regulations, could be arrested with felony charges on just about every single person in America for one reason or another, with taxes or whatever. If you don't think there's enough government, then you should go out and vote for Democrats. But look, if you do, if you think that this has gone far enough, if you're sick and tired of politics being in everything, there is one party. Look, I'm not going to blow sunshine at you. It's going to say there's the party of big government, the party of small government. There's a party of big government, and then there's a party of slightly less big government. But that's the lesser of two evils, and the lesser of two evils is the lesser of two evils. And finally, I would simply say this. I think the Kavanaugh situation shows when you look, both parties are trying to get their people on the Supreme Court. Both parties are trying to get their philosophy advanced. So I'm not saying that well, geez, Republicans are angels and Democrats are vile. But if you look at the way those last two, if you look at Kavanaugh versus what was it, Scotty Garrett,
Merrick Garland.
Merrick Garland, yes. So look, so let's just try and be fair here, okay? Republicans trying to stop Merrick Garland, Democrats are trying to stop Brett Kavanaugh. If you look at the tactics that the Republicans employed, and you can think of all politics as dirty politics, I generally do too. But nothing that I saw was directed against Merrick Garland's character, was directed against his personal life. And maybe you have problems with issues of his judicial record, but that's legitimate. There was no attempt to destroy him. The Republicans didn't trot out 15 people who claimed that he raped them. The Republicans didn't do any of that stuff. And if you despair the civility, destruction of civility in politics, I think it is unquestioned that there is one party that is more responsible for that kind of personalized attack That's the Democrats. That what they did to Kavanaugh, they can do to anybody. And you don't have to like it, but it's true. It's Democrats who are in the streets breaking windows and smashing things. It's Democrats of Antifa who are stopping traffic and beating up cars and telling people where to drive. It's the Democrats that are committing all of these violent acts. It's the Democrats that have been doing the things like shooting Republican politicians and so on. They're not equally poxed houses. I agree, a pox on both their houses. But if you have to have a vote in this, and you do, I'm going to put a pox on the slightly less poxy house.
There's a case to be made for conservatism, for capitalism, for constitutionalism, and frankly, for common sense. Bill Whittle will be making it right here on Bill Whittle Now, and we'll be doing more of this kind of material at BillWhittle.com because of the members there who pay $9.95 a month, not for something that they can get, but for something that they can give to the country and to the world. We hope you join them today. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible. Bill, the final case I'd like you to make actually is to Democrats themselves.
The first vote I ever cast for president in my life was in 1984 for Walter Mondale, and I did it because he said he was going to raise taxes. This was good news for me because I wasn't paying any taxes. I thought Ronald Reagan was going to get us all killed. I thought Ronald Reagan walking out of the negotiations in Reykjavik was the end of the world, literally the end, our last chance of survival. I used to passionately believe in things that I didn't know very much about. And by the way, my last vote for a Democrat was in 2000. I voted for Al Gore. Not proud of either of these things, mind you. But again, all of this was before I really started thinking about how things work and what appears to be true versus what I would like to be true. So I'm not coming at you as a voted red all my life, you need to get on the team kind of thing. I'm voting as a guy who's trying to find the best way for this country to go forward. I thought Al Gore was a smarter guy than George Bush. I'm sure he is. And I thought he was a nicer guy than George Bush. But what we find is that what behaviors actually consist of are not the same as what characters appear to be. We would think that the way to cure poverty is to shovel money at poor neighborhoods. And what we find, whether we like it or not, is that the more of this we do, the more poor and the more toxic they become. So I would say to people who lifelong Democrats, I would simply say this: whether you like it or not, your party is the party of the inner city. Newark, St. Louis, Chicago, all of these murder pits, all of them have been governed by an unbroken string of Democrats for 80 years, 70, 80 years, 90, 100 years. It's like 135, 140 years in the case of Atlanta. You can't walk away from the fact that it is Democratic policies that are driving the murder rate in America. It's not honest citizens living in Plano, Texas, who are shooting each other down. The reason the murder rate is so high in America is because young black men are gunning each other down in these pits of hopelessness and despair that have been turned into hopelessness and despair by Democratic policies. You don't have to like it, but you can't deny it. So if you're a lifelong Democrat and you love this country and you've always felt proud of this country, you have to start asking yourself a few questions. Do you want to be the party of Antifa? I wouldn't. I never would have been. I'd never ever vote for a group of people who are smashing windows and burning down campuses because they don't want to hear a gay man come and speak to them. I'm not going to be a part of that party. I'm not going to be a part of the party that is responsible for these inner cities. And I'm not going to be a part of the party that is essentially boycotted any sense of the future so that they can spend money now to get votes. So I would simply say to you the same thing that I would say to myself, which occurred to me personally, and which also occurred to Ronald Reagan, and that is that you didn't leave the Democratic Party, the Democratic Party left you. The Democratic Party was composed, and still is mostly composed, of patriotic, hardworking Americans. But if you think that the Democratic Party is the party of the working guy, the way you've always felt, you're wrong. The biggest supporters of the Democratic Party are people like, all the tech giants, Zuckerberg and Spielberg and all the billionaires, all the Hollywood billionaires. They're all Democrats, all of them. Donald Trump convinced working people that voting for him was a better move. And when working people, when regular little guys started voting Republican, the economy went from 1% to 4%, and it put food on the table for millions of American families, and it wasn't dependent on charity. They got to live their lives with pride and some sense of control. It's not It's not abandoning your principles to switch parties. I switched parties in pursuit of my principles. And I would just ask you to consider that.
If there's a case to be made for conservatism, for capitalism, for constitutionalism, and frankly, for common sense, Bill Whittle will be making it right here on Bill Whittle Now, and we'll be doing more of this kind of material at BillWhittle.com because of the members there who pay $9.95 a month, not for something that they can get, but for something that they can give to the country and to the world. We hope you join them today. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible. And the first group I want you to address is people who are Republicans, but were not Trump supporters, who might be classified even as so-called never-Trumpers, who still don't like the president.
All right, let's start with them. So this argument is for people who are Republicans and who find Donald Trump so distasteful that they simply can't pull the lever for him. Well, first of all, he's not on the ballot this November. So if your problem is with Donald Trump, you can go and vote for the Republican Party down the ticket without having given any direct support to Donald Trump, if that is your overriding concern.
Let me push back a little bit on that, because Trump has been going to rallies around the country saying, I am on the ballot.
It doesn't matter. We all know it doesn't matter, Scott. You're not voting for President Trump in this election. His name is not on any ballot. And so whether he supports people or not is not the point. If you are absolutely in your heart of hearts determined to keep a promise you made to yourself that you will never ever vote for Donald Trump, then for God's sakes, get out there and vote for the people that are going to confirm conservative justices supplied by Donald Trump. And you don't have to vote for Donald Trump at all. I would also say I think that the number of never Trumpers and the people who voted for Trump with holding their nose are certainly not convinced that they were wrong in the sense of decorum and presidential behavior and so on. I think probably, in fact, many of those people have found even more evidence to not like Donald Trump. But it's very hard to argue with his achievements as president, and there are many, but I'll just leave you with two. 4%, almost 5% economic growth, and 2 conservative Supreme Court justices with at least another 1 or 2, I suspect, on the way. This is worth voting for regardless of your feelings towards this individual.
There's a case to be made for conservatism, for capitalism, for constitutionalism, and frankly, for common sense. Bill Whittle will be making it right here on Bill Whittle Now, and we'll be doing more of this kind of material at BillWhittle.com because of the members there who pay $9.95 a month, not for something that they can get, but for something that they can give to the country and to the world. We hope you join them today. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible. Okay, second group of people. These are independents, and I don't mean the kind of independents who just declared themselves independent because they're really Democrat and they'd like to virtue signal by saying that they're not captive of any political party. But these are actual independents who look at both sides and aren't sure what to do going into this midterm. What do you say to those independents?
Well, I would say to them, regardless of your position on social issues, a booming economy is good for everybody. If you're one of those people if you're an independent who want to take the conservative position, the fact that the economy is growing at such a rate means that there's more investment, there's more jobs available. If you already have a job, that's fine. They always say that old definition is a recession is when your neighbor's out of work, and a depression is when you're out of work. But you'll find that most of the people who used to be out of work are not out of work anymore. And not only is that a question of like an economic number that you get to wave around, is 4% economic growth. That number is a simple statistic. The impact on the lives of your fellow citizens, and especially yourself if you're underemployed or unemployed, is transformational. There's nothing worse than being out of work. I was working out here in Los Angeles as an editor. I know this is not exactly a working in the coal mine story, because that's what my ancestors did in Wigan. But during that strike, I remember meeting with another couple of friends of mine in the TV business, and we thought we were never going to work again. And our day consisted of nothing but waiting for that lunch. We would simply wait for that noon lunch where we could get together, commiserate, and that was our day. The spiritual aspect of people working is something that is extraordinarily important, not just to the country, but to the individuals involved. And if you've got a 4% economic growth with one party and 1% or less with another, that should move you in a certain direction. Now, if you're an independent who leans liberal, then I would simply say to you this: the ability of the government to hand money to people, and if you assume that this is completely legitimate, the ability of the government to step in and help people is predicated on large degree by how much money the government takes in. The government either prints money or they take it in through taxes. An economy growing at 4%, even at a slightly lower tax rate, generates far more federal revenues than an economy that's growing at 1% with a higher tax rate. So if you really do care about the poor and infrastructure and all the rest of it, you kind of want to go with the guys that are making the economy.
There's a case to be made for conservatism, for capitalism, for constitutionalism, and frankly, for common sense. Bill Whittle will be making it right here on Bill Whittle Now, and we'll be doing more of this kind of material at BillWhittle.com because of the members there who pay $9.95 a month, not for something that they can get, but for something that they can give to the country and to the world. We hope you join them today. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks to the members at BillWhittle.com for making this possible.
Yes, Bill. I like Bill Whittle. Smart guy. Now, let's see, we've been on 41 minutes. And that is fun. So showing one person. If you see the chat, say something so I know that it's working, because I'm not really sure if it is or not. All right, let's see what we got here. Yeah, they sure wrapped up that bomber case awful fast, didn't they? It's almost like they knew it in advance what was going on. It's so weird. I don't know what to think about that. I really don't. That's just too weird. But I don't think it came from anybody that's a Republican. Actually, I know it didn't. Laura Loomer actually reported that mainstream media was saying that he was a Republican. Laura Loomer went in, did the research. He's a Democrat. So there you go. I put that, I embedded that tweet on the website. You can look at it. It's just another one of those things where I don't know how the mainstream media expects us to ever take them serious again, because you would just have to be an idiot to believe anything they say. And I include Fox News. I don't care who it is. I don't believe any of them. If I don't look it up, if I don't research it myself and come to the conclusion on my own, I don't believe it at all. It's so sad we live in a time like this. Let's see what everybody's talking about. There's not as much going on YouTube as usual. I wonder. Oh, Project Veritas. All these Project Veritas videos where they're doing these undercover videos and catching people saying, well, somebody's here. Hey there, my name is, it's another language. Hey there, my name is, I don't know how to pronounce that. Master poster, can I post here? Also, how do you feel about Arthur Jones, the Republican nominee for the Illinois 3rd Congressional District? I don't know anything about him. I really couldn't say anything about him. And if he's not a Democrat, then he's got to be a step up. So, but are you? Where do you live? I don't know what your name is because it's in something from Asia, Chinese, Japanese, something, but I can't read it. Are you from here in the States? Jones is a former neo-Nazi organization leader. Why do you think he won a Republican primary? Oh, I get it. So it's a Republican, Nazi. I get it. Yeah. Well, the only one that do you realize that it was actually the Democrats who were the Nazis? In Dinesh D'Souza's book, he actually lays this all out in The Big Lie. He gives the history of that the Nazis actually got the ideas from the American Democratic Party. And it's in this book right here, Dinesh D'Souza's The Big Lie. And in this book, he lays out how we were lied to about that, and how the big lie is that that it was the Democrats that were the racists and the Nazis and all that stuff, not the Republicans. That's what the big lie is. And if you pick this book up, let me see. Actually, I think I may even have it on page 5. There's a quote right here on page 5. 4. There it is. On page 4 of The Big Lie, it says, "This is the paradigm that the progressives and the Democrats are the party of emancipation, equality, and civil rights. I showed instead that they are the party of slavery, Indian removal, segregation, and Jim Crow, of racial terrorism and the Ku Klux Klan, in opposition to the civil rights movements of the 1960s. My goal was to strip away the race card from the Democrats, a card they had been successfully playing against Republicans for a generation. Incredibly, the Democrats had taken full credit for the civil rights movement, even though Republicans are the ones who got it passed, and even though the opposition to it came entirely from the Democratic Party. Democrats accused Republicans, the party of emancipation, in opposition to segregation, bigotry, and white supremacy, of being the party of bigotry and white supremacy." And so there you go. That's The Big Lie. Really good book, by the way. You should pick it up. Oh, Jones was a former. Interesting. Why do you think somebody who believes in Nazism was running a Republican then and also winning? That's strange. You must not be seeing. The video, since I just explained it. Or maybe there's a little bit of a delay. All right. So. Yeah, let's take a listen to this. Project Veritas.
Angelo Pacheco from Kansas City, welcome.
Hi. What will you do to stop gun violence affecting my peers across the nation? Would you vote for more school funding to provide more security? And will you, Senator McCaskill, vote for an all-out ban like you said in last week's Project Veritas video?
And since you brought it up, let me just say about the Veritas videos. There was nothing in those videos that were bad from my perspective, because people in Missouri know where I stand on these issues. They got some kids behind closed doors talking out of school. Big deal. I'll tell you what was a big deal. They fraudulently embedded themselves in my campaign for weeks, misrepresenting who they were. They got into our computers, proprietary information, for 20 hours. Who knows what they stole? They weren't there to help me. They were there to help Josh Hawley. And the idea that a complaint has been filed with the Attorney General's office, and when we called to ask about the complaint, they said, call the campaign. The Attorney General's office cannot allow there to be a new normal, that fraud can be committed in anybody's campaign. I don't care if it's somebody I'm for or somebody I'm against. That somebody can come in and commit fraud and get in your computers, and the Attorney General does nothing. That cannot be the new normal.
McCaskill's acting like she's the
60 seconds, but go ahead, Mr.
She's
Hawley.
the victim here.
Thank you. There's
When
the
they get
Washington
caught, they
two
act
step
like
right
they're
there.
the victim.
Senator McCaskill is caught saying something on video, and she blames me. Her initial reaction was to accuse me of fraud, to accuse me personally of fraud, which is absolutely outrageous and totally not true. And then to ask for the state of Missouri, I guess, to appoint a prosecutor with taxpayer money to go after her political opponents. And I know it's become fashionable on campuses for liberal Democrats to shut down speakers they don't like, but I have never heard of the state appointing a prosecutor with taxpayer money to go after a political opponent. And to accuse me of, I just think it's, again, we're at the desperation phase of Senator McCaskill's campaign. McCaskill?
Yeah, I'm not asking for a lot of, by the way, he's appointed special prosecutors all the time. his office, there's been 3 different articles written in the last 2 weeks about the mess in his office right now. He's in a hurry. He's never even gone in a courtroom and tried a criminal case in his life. So maybe he should be appointing other prosecutors. But the point is that this was a fraud. This isn't about the tape. People in Missouri know where I stand. I've done 52 town halls. I've walked in anywhere in Missouri. I said, come on in, ask me any questions. I'm not afraid to tell anybody where I stand. I am afraid of an attorney general that looks the other way when somebody comes in and steals proprietary information out of somebody's computer.
I do want to ask a follow-up here real quick, so indulge me for a few moments if you would. Ms. McCaskill, do you blame Mr. Hawley's campaign for that video?
No, I don't blame him for that video, but what I do blame him for is when a complaint is filed under the Merchandise Practicing Act, which he talks about and touts all the time, with a clear prima facie case has been laid out, that instead of immediately saying, of course, we'll look into it, they refer us to his campaign as if this was not a serious matter. That's what I'm complaining about.
And Mr. Hawley, did your campaign have anything to do with that video?
Absolutely not. And to accuse me of fraud, which is what Senator McCaskill did, she said that I committed fraud, that I participated in a fraud. She said that on television. Again, it's on Color 10. The video is widely available. I'm sure it's being sent even now. So I invite you to look at the record. But these kind of desperate attacks are sad to see, especially at the end of it's been a long 36-year career for Senator McCaskill. But I hope that this isn't how she's going to go out.
I think a lot of people in the past have taken for granted the role of news organizations like ours, and now they don't take us for granted anymore.
On the other hand, Marty's right. It's, I mean, the criticism is relentless. The praise, nicely, is more, but the criticism is also relentless, and we're one of the few businesses that sometimes makes their readers unhappy, makes their audience unhappy.
Investigative journalist and writer James O'Keefe is founder and president of Project Veritas.
So when people talk about the work you do, there's no question that if you look at the results, that you catch people saying things that they wouldn't say normally if they knew a journalist was in the room. If they knew they were talking to a journalist, they wouldn't behave in the way that they do. And I think people are open to that. They're willing to see that, you know, hypocrisy, duplicity, those things are, when you uncover those are part of bedrocks of journalism. But where you lose a lot of journalists are the methods that you go about doing it, where you send somebody in to pose as something they're not. Can you talk about why you do that? Talk about your methodology.
Well, first of all, I'm going to answer your question about that. Let me first tell you a bit about why I'm here. I'm not here to seek recognition from established media. I don't seek your praise, and I don't really care what the established media thinks of me. I'm here because I recognize the power that's inherent in mainstream media. Okay, our stories can't succeed unless they get in the mainstream media. That's our mission. And this week, we were on every single TV station in Missouri after we caught Claire McCaskill and her staffers. Every TV station. I understand that the media has more power than all 3 branches of government, because an informed citizenry is what makes that power. And a lot of people in the media don't think there's anything wrong with the media, but the media is not very popular amongst the American people. So what we did, and what journalists have a problem with, Andy, is we went undercover into the media itself. I mean, who's going to guard the guardsmen? Brian Stelter seems like a nice guy, but I don't think so. Someone has to hold them accountable. If the media has more power than all 3 branches of government, and many people in history have said that, who is going to hold them accountable? So we go undercover, because you had asked me about Dean Baquet, executive editor of the New York Times, and posing as a victim in the Washington Post. We go undercover into CNN. We find a CNN producer in Atlanta who says that the Russia story is for ratings. In his words, it was, and I quote, the Russia story was, and I quote, bullshit, unquote. His words, not mine. I don't report anything unless you can see and hear it coming out of people's own mouths. That's a standard that's well above and beyond Bob Woodward, who quotes anonymous sources relaying information from another anonymous sources months after the fact and uses poetic license.
But address the issue of methodology then. So, I mean, you've established, and I think, you know, I acknowledge that from the beginning, people, it's clear that, you know, your results, the things that people say, they've acknowledged that, yes, people say things differently when they're in private. But why do you send in people, reporters, the Washington Post case that you just referenced?
Well, we
You
sent
in
a
somebody who was
a reporter
who posed
because
as a victim.
due to
So
the
why?
extraordinary urgency of the circumstances and how broken we think the media has become. And this is not a right-wing sentiment. You can go ahead and read Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent to understand the perverse economic incentives that exist in the media, the pressure that advertisers put on people. This is not a right-wing methodology. You can go back and read Edward Bernays' Propaganda. You can read Walter Niebuhr talk about the stupidity of the average man. We went into the Washington Post for one reason, to draw people out. Look at the history of undercover journalism. You have people posing as longshoremen. You have the Chicago Sun-Times, which has denied a Pulitzer Prize for posing as a bar.
All right, so I'm going to wrap it up at the 1 hour mark of this live stream. So we got about 5 minutes left. You learned something from Chomsky. I'd address the guy in the chat room. I don't know what his name is. Doesn't have a name I can read, so I have no way to call him by his name. But anyway, we have about 5 minutes left, 4 minutes left, and then I'll wrap it up. We'll do it again real soon. Probably tomorrow. I'll do another one. Have some things lined up. This was the first time, so I'm just kind of getting my legs, seeing how it goes, and it's kind of fun. Yes, I went to college. I know about Chomsky and all that stuff. Yeah, I have a history degree and a political science degree, so I am up to speed. So we got about 3 more minutes, and then I'll wrap it up.
Bartender for 9 months. You look at the history, people posed as drug traffickers, we posed as pimps, prostitutes, telephone technicians. It's always to draw an honest conversation out of the person we're talking to. And I unequivocally and categorically deny that I ever tried to plant a fake story, ever. If you go back and read the original Washington Post story, they did not report that. Those were motives that were falsely attributed to me after the fact. And I would go under oath, as would my entire staff, if given the opportunity. I would go under oath to say that.
Do you feel like you can't get into those conversations unless you go in with duplicitous, or you go in as under false pretenses?
You can't. People are not going to be honest oftentimes. It's like what veteran journalist Ken Aletta said, that politicians are going to make it really hard for you to know what they're actually thinking and doing. So this is his words, not mine. You need to bribe and seduce them. I mean, spare me that this is not about journalism ethics, okay? This is about power. This is about who you are allowed to investigate. Because if we were doing this to the NRA or to anti-abortionists, y'all would be singing my praises.
James, can you talk about the perspective you bring to your stories? That's one of the criticisms another criticism that journalists have, is that you come at these stories from a conservative perspective. Do you feel like those voices are being heard, or like Selena's saying that that's another problem?
I think that the criticism of an agenda is irrelevant. I mean, ultimately what matters is what the person is saying, and truth is paramount. And when it comes to the purity of journalism, and the closest thing to journalism is we use videotape. It's videotaped evidence. It's the irrefutability of what we do that people don't like. It doesn't leave room for interpretation. Images transfix in a way that words don't. You can hear the intonation, you can hear the cadence, there's no disagreement. And I think it is the irrefutability of what we do that upsets people. If you look at the history of journalism, Upton Sinclair, if you read his biography, he was an avowed socialist. More power to him. If you look at undercover people, there have been people who've done this. They stopped doing it in the last 25 years. If you look at people, there's a reporter named Gunther Wollruff, and he actually infiltrated a German newspaper by being a reporter. And he had an agenda. His agenda was workers' rights so that the workers could strike. I don't think motive and agenda and political philosophy is relevant. I don't think that should be part of the calculation. The only thing that matters is what it is that you are reporting and whether or not it's true. All this discussion about ethics is besides the point, because it really, the discussion about the ethics is a subjective one. Because what matters is what constitutes a compelling public interest. And that's what this is really about. It's about what constitutes that interest.
Do you, just so we all know, do you have any journalists embedded in any newspapers across the country now?
Do we have people embedded in newspapers?
Yeah. Any of your reporters?
Well, we're not going to acknowledge, we have a video coming out tomorrow on another United States senator, but if you're doing, if you have integrity, if there's no difference between how you project yourself to the world and what you say, you shouldn't be worried about people like me. If people had integrity, they shouldn't be paranoid.
Can you, so address the one issue, the veracity that you just talked about? Some people say, well, but he's selective in the way he cuts the videos, the way he shows the videos. Address that.
Selective editing. All journalism is edited selectively so. Newspaper people select their words and they arrange them in sentences to paint an elaborate portrait. But
all right, that's the 1 hour mark. So I'm going to wrap it up. All right. I'll probably see you tomorrow. We'll do another one for an hour. It'll be good. Thank you for watching, and go to the site, check it out, and I'll see you tomorrow.